All right. I think a few more attendees are going to be trickling in, but we will get started. Thank you so much for joining our informational webinar for Request for Information RFI 5488 for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program capacity building. The plan today is to review the outline of the RFI and including the requirements and the type of information that we are looking for, and then to also place the RFI within the context of our other programs. So I'll share a little bit more information about other program opportunities and how this program opportunity notice or PON that we are developing will fit into the other program offerings. All right, we'll get started. Let's start with our first slide, please. Thank you. So the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, has launched a request for information or RFI to solicit stakeholder input into a preliminary outline for new funding opportunity. And that is specifically for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship program capacity building. By responding to this RFI, our hope is to incorporate community feedback to design and launch this new funding opportunity that will support the growth of a strong clean energy economy and also strengthen pathways to well-paying union jobs. So those are the goals of the RFI. The goals of the program that we are designing, that we're looking to design, is to grow a diverse, equitable, and inclusive pipeline of skilled talent for the clean energy labor market with pathways to family supporting living wage jobs, and also to create and or expand the capacity of direct entry, pre-apprenticeship, and registered apprenticeship programs to enable training at larger scale. Next slide, please. Give me one second. Here we go. So in terms of the eligibility requirements, there are a few, and the first one is that training initiatives must include clean energy technical training. So that means developing either a new program or expanding an existing clean energy training program and hands-on experience. And broadly speaking, when we speak about clean energy technical training or clean energy specifically, we're referring to the definition of clean energy as is stated in the New York Clean Energy Industry Report, and that includes renewable electric power generation, grid modernization and energy storage, energy efficiency, renewable fuels, and alternative transportation. All projects that are funded have to connect participants, apprentices, and workers to high quality jobs. That term is underlined. We'll define that actually shortly because it is quite expansive. We also require, or we're hoping to require a minimum of 50% of training participants to be from disadvantaged communities or priority populations. Those terms too, we will define shortly in the next few slides. An optional component to this program that we are developing is that projects is a K through 12 education outreach plan or a career literacy plan. So projects that include an education outreach plan to promote clean energy careers and pathways to K through 12 schools or technical high schools will be eligible for additional funds, and we'll talk about that shortly. Um, any project that includes a K through 12 education outreach plan must also ensure that at least 50% of participant schools are located in a disadvantaged community or serve students from disadvantaged communities or priority populations. And so we will define those terms actually in just a moment on the next slide. So what is a high quality job? A high quality job, so this definition was actually informed by the Workforce Development Institute, and the high quality job is one that provides wages that meet or exceed living wage levels as defined by standards such as the MIT Living Wage Calculator. So the living wage really is, we go by the definition of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and the living wage is defined as the minimum income standard that, if met, draws a very fine line between the financial independence of the working poor and the need to seek out public assistance or suffer consistent and severe housing and food insecurity. So MIT has developed a living wage calculator which estimates the cost of living in communities and regions across the United States. And this tool helps individuals, communities, and employers determine a local wage rate that allows residents to meet minimum standards of living. So you can actually, once we post this slide deck to the program page, you can click on the link here, or you can just Google MIT Living Wage Calculator, and you will see the living wage for your region or even county broken down by state, which is really nice. So projects should make sure that or high quality jobs should provide living wages, and projects should seek to demonstrate how jobs positively show wage progression over time. That is just one factor here for high quality jobs. The second one is that high quality jobs should provide benefits such as paid leave, health insurance, retirement pension savings, should support worker voice, safety, scheduling, predictability, and well-being, offer ongoing training and education or skill building, as well as opportunities for advancement, demonstrably give precedence to inclusivity and diversity, especially from disadvantaged communities or priority populations among its employers and workforce, and or provide worker representation from a bona fide labor union. So I mentioned this and or, and it's highlighted in blue because the definition is really not meant to include all of these factors or criteria in order to meet the definition of a high quality job, but it's really either one or the other, or a combination thereof. Next slide, please. Moving on to the definition for disadvantaged communities. The definition really began, the development of the definition began in 2020 following the formation of the Climate Justice Working Group under the Climate Act. And it really took the last, I would say, 2.5 years to really develop the definition and finalize it. It was identified, it was approved by the Climate Justice Working Group in March of this year. And disadvantaged communities really are defined as communities that bear the burdens of negative public health effects, environmental pollution, impacts of climate change, and possess certain socioeconomic criteria or comprise high concentrations of low and moderate income households. It's a very complicated definition, but to boil it down, essentially, it is identified by the top 35% of census tracts. So the top 35% in terms of 45 indicators across socioeconomic, environmental, and climate change concepts. It also automatically includes 19 tribal and indigenous land census tracts and low-income households defined as 60% or below state median income. You can find more information about the definition of disadvantaged communities on the Climate Act website, including this map. You can see a snapshot here where you can enter an address into the map to determine whether an individual or perhaps a school is located in a disadvantaged community. So it's a very savvy tool to keep handy. Next slide, please. The last definition I wanted to mention is one that we've added and we use quite frequently as part of the workforce development team in our programs, and it's the definition of priority populations. It includes low-income individuals, which are also covered by the disadvantaged community in a definition. It also includes veterans, individuals with disabilities, incumbents or existing or unemployed fossil fuel workers, previously incarcerated individuals, 16 to 24-year-olds who are enrolled in or have completed a comprehensive work preparedness training program. So those are programs such as BOCES, technical high schools, Conservation Corps, Youth Build, AmeriCorps, and so on. Homeless individuals and single parents. And the reason why we include priority populations is just to make sure those are covered in case they're not covered in the disadvantaged communities definition. Next slide, please. In terms of the anticipated funding amount, we're really looking to further training, clean energy training at scale. So at minimum, the option is, so the first option is up to $850,000, commensurate, of course, with the scale of training proposed. And then if a project were to include a K through 12 education outreach plan, that would unlock an additional up to $150,000, so up to $1 million total. It doesn't mean, we're not suggesting that a K through 12, any kind of K through 12 education outreach plan would give you a total of 150,000. It really depends on the scope. But ultimately, we would welcome proposals up to $1 million total, assuming they include an education outreach plan, and otherwise up to $850,000. What's really great about this envisioned program is that cost share, which many of you may know, we typically require between 10 and 30%. Cost share is actually not required, but may be contributed. So this is optional. Next question, or next slide, please. Um, Eligible applicants are bona fide labor unions, bona fide union training centers, New York State or federally registered apprenticeship programs, direct entry pre-apprenticeship programs that are affiliated with bona fide labor unions. And that is really it. So this program is really intended to fund the clean energy training at scale for pre-apprenticeship training programs and apprenticeship programs. Applicants must be based in New York State and serve New York State residents, and we highly encourage partnerships with other training partners, such as community colleges, universities, veterans programs that are associated with labor unions and apprenticeships, of course, technical schools, community-based and not-for-profit organizations, trade associations, manufacturers, equipment suppliers, and the list goes on. So partnerships are definitely encouraged. Next slide, please. Um, we mentioned a high level definition for clean energy, and we boil it down to just a little more um, to the eligible technology areas. So training initiatives must address a specified projected workforce gap. So we don't just fund any kind of training, it has to address a specific gap and prepare pre-apprentices, apprentices, and journey workers for employment in the following clean energy technology areas. And you can see them here. I'll just read them just for ease of for ease of reading. High efficiency HVAC and water heating, building electrification, heat pump technologies, large scale thermal energy networks, insulation and air sealing, high efficiency lighting controls, building automation and controls, smart grid and energy storage, electric vehicle charging station installation and maintenance, and renewable energy generation, transmission, and distribution. So quite a few eligible technology areas here. Next slide, please. Eligible training initiatives include a variety of different initiatives such as curriculum development, technical training, retraining of displaced fossil fuel workers, train the trainer training, equipment purchases, mobile labs, of course, pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training that goes without saying, and K through 12 education outreach and career literacy programs. We have a little caveat here where resources already exist to support training delivery. We really want to ensure that NYSERDA funding is used to build training infrastructure and capacity, for example, by funding equipment purchases. So really funding what is specifically needed. Next slide, please. In addition to clean energy training initiatives, we may also fund reasonable costs associated for additional services for individuals from disadvantaged communities and or priority populations. And this is specifically after all other resources have been investigated and exhausted. And these additional services include stipends, workforce preparation activities such as job readiness, coaching, mentoring, financial literacy, and so on. And then supportive services or wraparound services, which include transportation and childcare. And to give you an idea of how much we typically pay per person, we provide funding for wraparound services on the order of $2,000 to $4,000 per person, of course, as justified to supplement existing services. Next slide, please. This brings us to the application process. Unlike our traditional program opportunities that we've launched so far, we really are looking for a very short application process, 2 to 3 pages max, just contact information, eligibility verification via yes/no questions to make sure that you are eligible for funding, a brief description of the training initiative and the K through 12 career literacy program as applicable, the request funding amount, the expected outcomes and metrics, the connection to clean energy and to eligible clean energy technology, and a description of the quality of jobs to which the training or the K through 12 program is connected. So really short and sweet application form, and that would be reviewed on a rolling basis. So, on a first come, first serve basis. Applicants may be interviewed for additional information just to confirm the information provided on the application. And once they're approved for funding, we would require our standard materials that are required for a contract. Those include a short scope of work, a budget with a breakdown by task, and then a training schedule outlining the training activities based on an average 2-year contract duration. And then the way that payments would be reimbursed or costs would be reimbursed, they would be on a work performed basis on milestones or based on time and materials. So we have two options there. Next slide, please. So these are our questions as part of the RFI. The first one, and I hope we'll have enough time at the very end to review these questions. I'd greatly appreciate your feedback during this webinar and also written feedback. Um, these are the 4 questions. The first one, are there any concerns with requiring a connection to high quality jobs? Defined in part as those that meet or exceed a prevailing wage or a living wage, as defined by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The second question is, which requirements or guidelines, if any, should NYSERDA include for the K through 12 outreach or career literacy program element? The third question is the maximum funding amount sufficient to enable capacity building and training at scale? And the fourth and final question is, are there any other definitions or parameters you suggest we include in the program? And if so, what are they? Thank you. And then the next slide, please. So for every RFI response, we request the following information. First, the respondent's name, so your name, title, affiliation, address, email address, and phone number, basic contact info. A general background about your organization, including a summary of any previous experience that could be relevant to the RFI, and then just the RFI questions followed by responses and page numbers. Comments are due Friday, August 18th, 2023 at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please limit your responses to 3 pages, no more, and email them to the email address listed on the slide, wfinfo@nyserda.ny.gov, with the subject line RFI 5488, Apprenticeship and Pre-Apprenticeship Program Capacity Building. Once we receive your comments and feedback, we may request further details and set up a call or a meeting to discuss the feedback provided. And then otherwise, if everything is clear, we should be good to go. And that's it with regards to the RFI. If you have any questions until by now, I know I've reviewed probably everything in the last 20 minutes or so, please drop them into the Q&A feature, and we will gather all of your questions and address them at the very end. Next slide, please. This brings me to the second half of our webinar. I wanted to put this RFI in context and give you some examples of some training projects that we've funded to date. Next slide, please. The very first one is Non-Traditional Employment for Women, or NEW, which is a direct entry pre-apprenticeship program. So NEW actually developed a training program to prepare low-income women, particularly women of color, for jobs and apprenticeships in the green collar economy. Offered free of charge to participants, their program, which is called Green Collar Prep, builds on the foundational skills acquired in NEW's core apprenticeship program, and really pre-apprenticeship program, Blue Collar Prep, and New at Night, by integrating content directly linked to sustainability and efficiency practices and providing students with comprehensive training in environmental literacy and construction techniques. It's a hands-on course that encompasses skills training, soft skills workshops, physical conditioning, mentoring, and networking opportunities with subject matter experts, as well as site tours that focus on environmental stewardship in the construction industry. Green Collar Prep also provides students with connections to necessary training certifications, as well as employment opportunities with apprenticeship partners and contractors, ensuring that women are equally represented in the sustainable construction industry. So you can see here a snapshot of their curriculum, their activities, which I just mentioned, and a long, long list of partners, which include Con Edison, National Grid, all the way through the MTA, City of New York's Department of Environmental Protection, and 30 plus registered apprenticeship programs. And you can see the metrics that we capture as part of each training project. Here's their final data. So 84 individuals trained, including 79 members of priority populations, 62 interviews facilitated to date. They've secured 8 partnerships in addition to the ones they already listed here. Um, they placed 30 apprentices or 30 individuals into apprenticeships and secured 9 full-time jobs. Next slide, please. Another example of a training project that we funded is actually through 32BJ. They partnered with Certus Controls to design and deliver a comprehensive training program on HVAC and building management systems, or BMS. They were looking to train 245 union members, including residents of environmental justice communities in New York City. So that's their target is 245. According to just Q1 data, they're almost on their way there, 185 trained to date. They have an 11-week course featuring HVAC fundamentals, BMS basics, plus an advanced version, and the trainer training, and they offer courses in English as well as in Spanish. So I should mention we do fund training in languages other than English to support a designated business need. And the overall goal, of course, was to support the development of a sustainable pipeline of workers in the HVAC and building trades. You can see here they train 82 individuals from disadvantaged communities, and some of their metrics that they've shared as they modified and developed for curricula. And then our last and final training project that I wanted to highlight is on the next slide. Labor's Local 17, which I actually had the pleasure of visiting yesterday. They have a fantastic training site in Newburgh, and they developed a training program to address the needs for large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic or PV installers in New York State. So we are funding an expansion of this program. Their target audience, this is a new project, is 100 journey workers, pre-apprentices, and new workers, including 60% individuals from disadvantaged communities. The curriculum consists of 60 hours of Solar Energy International large-scale ground mount PV installation safety and hands-on training, tool safety training, OSHA 10, ladder safety, and first aid and CPR. And they're partnering with a variety of different entities, including Solar Energy International, Best Resources, and various workforce development boards, UDIG New York, Laser East, to provide the training and also comprehensive wraparound services. And you can see here their target for placement, career placement opportunities is 10 in pre-apprenticeship programs, 30 in apprenticeships, and 55 in full-time jobs. That's it on the example training projects. I'll just cover briefly a few other resources, which will be on the next slide. And then another next slide, please. Thank you. The first one is we offer a partner connector platform. So it's a site that allows anybody who's interested in collaborating on a training project to connect with others and share their contact information. They're granted login access to the partner connector, and then they can use that information on the site to contact potential partners. So it's a really great, very simple, user-friendly website that allows you to share, scroll through training partners and kind of filter by zip code and region and look at their subject matter expertise and the types of services that they're looking for in another partner. So it's a really great platform. I encourage you to register and just to get a sense of who else is out there and whom you might be able to collaborate with. Next slide, please. So the program that we have in mind kind of complements some of our existing programs that I just wanted to share with you. The first one is PON, or Program Opportunity Notice 3981, focused on energy efficiency and clean technology training. The goal of this program is to support technical training, hands-on learning, job placement, and supportive services for new and existing workers, apprentices, journey persons, and students. The technology focus areas are very similar to the program that we have in mind, so you can see them here on the slide. There are 2 categories that we fund. The first is for upskilling or reskilling for existing workers and individuals in formal training programs. And these individuals in formal training programs include pre-apprentices and apprentices and journey workers. There's higher NYSERDA funding for qualifying union-led training and pre-apprenticeship training programs. And then there's a second category, training for new workers and new entrants to clean energy. There's a few requirements here, at least 50% of trainees from disadvantaged communities, higher NYSERDA funding if 100% of trainees are from those communities or priority populations. And then there's a placement requirement for paid internship, apprenticeship, full-time job, or advanced formal training positions. A minimum of 80% of trainees would have to be placed in those. You can see our impact to date, $14 million and counting. This is one of our big flagship programs. So just wanted to share that with you for awareness. Next slide, please. A similar program with similar requirements is focused on offshore wind training and development. So the goal of this program is to address the projected offshore wind workforce gaps and prepare workers for high growth jobs via technical training. You can see a list here of high growth job focus areas. This pond also has two categories, one for upskilling and reskilling existing workers and another for training for new workers, all very similar requirements as in the previous pond. We've only funded two projects to date, but this pond is open and is also seeking to further and promote training at scale. And then finally, our last slide is just a snapshot of some complementary funding opportunities that I wanted to flag for consideration. One is the POND 3982 on the job training program, which provides wage subsidies to clean energy businesses seeking to hire and train workers on the job. So the intent really is to help businesses ramp up quickly to full productivity. Businesses have to provide services in one or more eligible clean energy technology, and we provide wage reimbursement 50 to 75% depending on the nature of the type of worker. So if it's a worker from a disadvantaged community or priority population or a traditional worker, and then based on the nature of the job. So we provide 75% wage reimbursement for high efficiency HVAC work, up to $24 an hour for 4 to 6 months of a new hires training period. So we're talking a maximum of $23,000 in wage subsidies for clean energy businesses, which is a really nice incentive. A similar wage support program is our POND 4000 Clean Energy Internship Program, which provides funding to clean energy businesses, organizations, and local municipalities to hire interns for the clean energy sector. This one provides reimbursement of wages up to $17 an hour, also 75 to 90% of intern wages, depending on company size. And the maximum wage support here is $7,300 per intern for a 480-hour internship up to. And then finally, we have a Climate Justice Fellowship Program, POND 4772, which funds year-long fellowships to residents of disadvantaged communities while also building the capacity of local organizations to advance climate justice directly in their communities. So fellows receive a $40,000 stipend essentially for 12 months, and that includes wages, comprehensive benefits, and professional development through Columbia University's Climate School, resulting in a certificate of completion. So really exciting program. And then with that, this completes our webinar, and I guess I'm 30 minutes on the dot. Thank you so much, everyone.